the college football experience Power 5 preview on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, presented by WynnBET. Get started today and you're going to risk-free bet up to $500. Terms and conditions apply. Get the details at wynnbet.com. That's WYNN bet.com, and download the app today. We're also brought to you by PropSwap, America's #1 app to buy and sell sports bets. Use the promo code SGP on your first deposit to receive up to $500 in bonus cash. That's PropSwap.com, promo code SGP. We're also brought to you by Underdog. Make sure you head over to UnderdogFantasy.com and use the promo code SGPN for a free $25. Yes, you can use the free $25 to enter their Best Ball Mania 2. First place in Best Ball Mania 2 gets $1 million. That's right. Sign up now for a free shot at $1 million. Drafts are happening constantly, and it's not just NFL. They also have NBA, MLB, and more. UnderdogFantasy.com, promo code SGPN for your chance to win $1 million. We're also brought to you by the SGPN app. Yes, of course. Don't forget to download the SGPN app in the App Store or Google Play Store today.
Hey, what's up, you degenerate gamblers? This is Bill Burr, and you're listening to SGPN. Let it ride, baby.
Yes. Woo! Welcome to the college football experience, Power 5 and Notre Dame conference preview. My name is Colby Swinging Database Dan, aka Pick Dundee. That's not a pick. This is a pick.
You all-American son of a bitch.
And I'm joined by my co-host, former JMU Duke defensive back. Give it up for the burrito eating, sideline kiss stealing, wheeling and dealing, Patty C in the place to be.
Hi. Yeah, buddy. Yes, give me the great vibes. This is Richard Simmons just dancing around, arms up,
yes,
left, right.
All right, and third man in the booth, give it up for the rooftop IPA drinking, homebrew making, Tobacco Road living, the free lock giving, former Herndon Basketball League MVP. Give it up for NC Nick in the place to be.
What's up, guys? How we doing today?
We got the three amigos here, and we last week, I know we're in the middle of dropping these 130 episodes for every college football team, even some 2.0s and some FCS probably coming as well. But don't forget, last week we dropped an episode of the Group of Five, where the Group of Five preview, where we basically went through each conference, projecting who we thought would end up in the conference championships, and also the biggest storylines within the conference. So check out that episode, because this is the part 2, or should I say the part 1 to that episode, with the Power 5 and Notre Dame. And I think we should just start shooting right there with the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Look, Brian Kelly's done a great job. I think there's no denying that. He's a great football coach everywhere he's been, whether it's Cincinnati, Central Michigan. He has done a great job. He's definitely one of the better coaches in college football. Now, the question is, can Notre Dame actually get over the hump? I mean, yes, they've gotten over the hump before, but in a way, they get to these. They were a part of the ACC for 1 year, and they ended up going to the ACC championship, and they got the tar kicked out of them, and then they proceeded to get the tar kicked out of them again the following week, or the following game with the in the Invitational. What do we make of Notre Dame, and what should we expect progression wise with Brian Kelly this year? What do you think?
Who are you starting out with here?
Yeah, go for it, Patty. So you're the biggest Irish fan here.
That's true. That is true. My brother is rolling in his non-existent grave right now, as you say that. Thank God.
It's easy to see a tide turn.
Now, what do I think? I think we just previewed Notre Dame, and we're gonna drop that. That one's dropping tonight, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you will hear that I said I expect them to go 10-2, right? Thereabouts, and nearly.
So more of the same is what you're saying.
More of the same, and until this team gets some explosion at the wide receiver spot or somewhere on the field. I guess Kyron Williams is explosive, but they need. You know what? Jack Cohn could be your Chris Winkie that takes a really talented team over the top just by kind of being a good game manager. But what did they have? Peter Warrick. They need someone like that to take them to the next level.
They also had Lavernius Coles. That was a really good receiving core.
Yeah.
If I can interject, that same, you're talking about like that same is a bad thing. If you want to look at the whole, all 130 teams across the country or whatever the number is right now, the better teams, the top echelon, Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State. Other than that, Notre Dame is right there with Oklahoma and Georgia and whoever else. So we're talking about this like it's a bad thing. Brian Kelly has lifted this program up to the fact that they're in playoff contention pretty much every year. I'd say he's doing a hell of a job.
I mean, I think he is doing a hell of a job there, but
that
also
wasn't the question though.
Yeah, but I also think almost every key game, every big game, they kind of are on the short end of the stick there. I mean, look at
they're not on the short end of the stick. They're on the fucking miniature end of the stick.
Yeah, I mean, look, you could say
so the question is, can they jump up and be as good as Ohio State, Clemson,
or even Georgia? Georgia swept them in the season series,
although they lost by 1 and by like 4 in those
by
games.
6 and 1. But the one with 6 was a 13-point game with about 3 minutes left, so they did cake that one up a little bit. And I mean, look, I go to 19, they lose to Michigan 45-14, and they lose to Georgia. Those were their two hardest opponents on the schedule. Yes, they beat USC. I guess you could argue, was USC better than Michigan that year? Perhaps. I don't think so though. But my point is that Notre Dame fans want more out of this. They're not. They get rolled every time they play a good team. Now, or a top 10 team for the most part. Yes, they beat Michigan the year before in 2018.
Really a top 5 team.
Yeah, probably like more so top 5. And it's the way they lost too. I mean, honestly, if you look at some of these losses, if you want to go back to,
well, they're just always missing a piece. They're always missing a piece. They have turned the line into an extreme plus, but they're still missing the receivers. You know.
Well, yes, success breeds a thirst for more success. Upon the fan base. So Georgia wants more. That's why Georgia wasn't happy with Mark Richt. That's why if they can't do it this year or next year, they're going to want more too. I agree with everything you guys are saying. They seem to be missing a piece or two in order to win a national championship. But let's go back to the Charlie Weiss days. Don't forget about those days.
Yeah.
Okay.
Be grateful for what you have. That's for sure.
True. I'm all on board on that. But let me ask you this: what's the ceiling? Can they go undefeated this year?
No.
Regular season, yes, I think so. But
if you actually look at it, they don't play. I mean, I guess you could make the case that North Carolina was a top 10 team. I didn't value them as a top 10 team last year. The only top 10 team they're playing, in my opinion, would be Cincinnati.
I mean, USC could be pretty darn good this year.
I don't believe they're a top 10 team though.
Yeah,
it's still a tough schedule though.
It is. It is. I'm not.
There's no gimmies. There's no layups.
Yeah. I agree. I'm
Unlikely
just saying
they go 12-0.
I'm just saying if you look at what Brian Kelly does, he normally beats the teams they're supposed to beat, and when they play top 10 teams, they traditionally lose. Yes, they beat Clemson with Trevor Lawrence out, but I would say he has a very bad record against top 10 teams. Here is a situation where they might not be playing any top 10 teams. Cincinnati preseason top 10, but we'll see.
And Cincinnati's like a top 10 team that is there based on great coaching. And they have like around the 40 mark in terms of recruiting rankings. So they're way ahead of where they should be in terms of talent. So that's not the type of team that normally blows the doors off of Notre Dame.
So my point is that if you make that case, then there's a chance they could go undefeated.
Right.
Sure. I guess there's a chance, but I don't see it happening. I think Patty C's prediction of 10-2 is much more likely than 12-0.
I agree. But okay, let's get into this then, because Patty C, what he essentially did is he ranked I said, Patty C, let's rank the conferences based on your projected order. That's why we opened with Notre Dame, because we're going to go from worst to first based on the conferences, Patty C's order. I actually agree with it. So
I will say this about Notre Dame real quick. Are you guys at all excited about Brian Kelly beating Newt Rockney's record as the all-time winningest.
No, because there's way more games
Way
scheduled.
more games. That's true.
Yeah.
His win percentage is still way lower than Rockney's, if I'm not mistaken. So
I'm a live in the moment type guy. I don't get caught up with that historical stuff. I could care less.
He says that now. Wait till Coach K's final season here in college basketball.
every night Nick will be reminiscing.
He's already smashed every record possible. Okay.
Yeah. Well, you're gonna be crying.
Except the record of making the tournament. What if he misses the tournament 2 years in a row, huh?
The trash talk is already
There we
started.
go, buddy.
We're
there
5
we
months
go.
away.
All right. Well, based off of the rankings, I actually do agree with Patty C's conference rankings here among the Power Five. We're going to slide right into the ACC as our 5th rated conference.
Surprise, surprise. The West Coast echo chamber studio guys put the ACC last.
Buddy, that's my favorite conference. I'm ACC through and through.
He's a truther.
They just are not that good of a conference.
No, actually, I agree. I mean, Clemson has been their only saving grace for the last 5 years. So actually, I don't agree with. I mean, I do agree with them being 5th on the list. So
I mean,
just giving you all a hard
close.
time.
Yeah, I mean, I
Pac-12 is close
you
because they
that,
don't have the Clemson.
because they don't have
Yeah.
the Clemson, right?
So we look at this conference here. Well, first off, big storyline for me in this conference before we project our ACC championship and stuff. I think it's going to be watching throughout the season, watching the coach watch, because there's potential. There's potential for, I'm counting, I think 4 coaches could be gone by this year.
Who do you got on the hot seat? Well, obviously Fuente.
Justin Fuente's number 1.
Yeah.
Actually, Dino Babers is probably number 1.
That's true.
Then Fuente's probably 2. 3, David Cutcliffe, and 4, I'm gonna make the case for Pat Narduzzi. I think Pitt might be tired of being a 6-6 team. How many years can you do it? There should be some change at some point. The Coastal, they could win the Coastal this year. I mean, same with Virginia Tech or Duke. But
That's true.
I just think there's a chance that they're stale. They're feeling it's a little stale in Pittsburgh, and they're saying, "Hey, maybe we need to move on to the next coach." So, I know you can kind of make the case for Jeff Collins, but I think it's too early. But that's one of my big storylines. I also think the big storyline of, can North Carolina take the next step? Because I know that preseason magazines have them in the top 10. They weren't a top 10 team to me last year.
Yeah, I think that's on everyone's radar right there.
Yeah, can they take the next step? And I think I'm the team that's most intriguing to me is Boston College.
That's true.
I haven't said that, probably hasn't been said since Glenn Foley. You know what I mean? But I do find this team to be they have a very easy schedule. And I think Hafley was very impressive in year 1 and Phil Jerkovic back at quarterback. I think they're one of the more interesting teams in college football, dare I say. What do you guys make of the ACC? Should we go by the division? Let's start out with the Atlantic.
I would have to agree with you. I don't think I've ever once been interested in Boston College football, if I'm being honest. But they are kind of an interesting team given that schedule and the coach and the quarterback situation.
Yeah, Nick, what are you making of Boston College in the Atlantic?
I do think they're probably the most interesting team in that division. There's a couple others in the Coastal, which I find interesting as well. We'll get to them, but I mean, it's not a very interesting race. Obviously, Clemson's going to win it. I guess the interesting part is who comes in second. BC will be vying for that, as will NC State, Louisville. You could argue Wake Forest possibly. But yeah, I think Boston College is very interesting this year. I think they could have a special year if everything goes their way.
Yeah. If you want like a play that you could say, if everything goes their way, you could honestly make a case for them winning 10 or 11 wins. I mean, I look at the schedule besides the Clemson game. I'm looking at it right now and I don't see a for sure loss anywhere else.
That would,
and they played Clemson tough last year.
That kind of thing happens too. Like teams just come out of nowhere, and you say, "Whoa, they're really good. I guess that coach is awesome or whatever." When it's really a lot of things breaking their way, and maybe it is partially.
Maybe this is like
really
Kansas in 2007,
right?
You know what I mean? Because you look at Colgate, UMass, Temple, Missouri, but they get Missouri in Chestnut Hill. I would favor Missouri by a field goal or so, but that's a winnable game. Then they're at Clemson, where they
assume they take the L.
Yeah, but then after that, though, they get a bye week before NC State, which is probably their top competition in the conference besides Clemson, for that number 2 spot. Then they're at Louisville. That's the hardest stretch of the season for them. Is probably the NC State and at Louisville. But after that, it's at Syracuse, home to Virginia Tech, at Georgia Tech, home to Florida State, home to Wake. This is a great schedule.
I feel like they've done well in those like weeknight nationally televised games against Virginia Tech, whether it be Thursday or Friday night.
And this one is a Friday night.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I think we're all just remembering Matty Ryan.
Yeah.
yeah, Matty Ice.
They
Matty
got him
Ice.
a couple times back then, though.
Yeah, I think 2 years in a row, kind of great games, and BC found a way to win both of them, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're right.
Yeah, I think there's an
Matty
outside.
Ice.
Yeah, I think there's an outside chance BC and NC State could push for double-digit wins, especially if you include a potential bowl win. Both teams, I think, are fairly even, but BC does have a slightly easier schedule. So, yeah, those two teams will be fun to watch.
I mean, who would have thought Boston College would be the most interesting storyline in the ACC 5 years ago, 2 years ago, 4 months ago?
I don't think they are. I think
North Carolina or what?
North Carolina should be.
Yeah, I think BC is the most interesting
In the
that
Atlantic.
division.
Okay.
I agree with
I could think of 3 or 4 more in the Coastal when it comes to UNC. What the hell Miami's going to do? Are they overrated like usual? Can Virginia Tech? Can Fuente save his job? What is Pitt ceiling? I think the you guys were saying last week that you thought the Atlantic was more interesting, and I said I disagree.
I stand by that statement because I know the Coastal is going to be a complete crapshoot. I haven't like knowing that Boston College could be 11-1. It's just that's crazy to me. That's absolutely crazy. Whereas like the Coastal, I'm like I don't know what is going on.
That just
there.
goes to show how far Miami and Virginia Tech have fallen. Because there would 10 years ago, there's no chance that, or 15 years ago, really for Miami, there's no chance you would ever be more interested in Boston College than Miami or Virginia Tech. But now they're mediocre at best, and they're at the point where it's like, hey, prove it or else I'm not going to believe. I believe too many times, and you failed me too many times.
Yeah, fail me once, shame on you. Where's that George W? Right?
Yeah, right.
It's easy to see a tide turn.
Let's talk.
But I am interested in Miami, being a kind of like Miami believer. De'Aaron King, there's part of me that thinks there's magic. Maybe they get Alabama.
And even when they're not good, and even when they lose, it's still interesting to watch them lose.
Yeah, they're like the Redskins. Win, lose, or draw. It's entertaining watching their season.
So we all have Clemson winning the Atlantic, right?
Yeah,
correct.
Okay, so we can now shift over to the Coastal. I'll say this: Clemson's extremely thin at quarterback. If Ukulele gets dinged up, it would be a walk-on.
The door opens.
That would be their backup.
Yeah.
I just speaking of DJU, I just heard his first endorsement is with Bojangles.
Oh
man, is that fried chicken?
yeah.
Yeah, buddy.
That's North Carolina kind of base.
South Carolina, yeah.
Bojangles.
Well
is
played.
money.
Dude,
Well played.
I have heard people in the South swear on Bojangles more so than Popeyes, more so than
The college football playoff.
more so than the Colonel,
Yeah.
more so than the college football playoff. Now, churches, is that a Southern thing or is where is churches?
Church's Chicken? I don't know.
Yeah.
I went to one in San Bernardino once.
That's kind of a ghetto one.
Yeah,
That's
that
more
was
of a ghetto.
yeah.
It's more of a
Yeah.
Compton one. Right
Yeah. Let's talk Coastal, guys, because in the you guys, Nick says it's the more exciting side of the conference. I guess it's exciting because we don't know who's going to win. I think you touched on Miami. I am not a believer in Miami. I'm very bullish on not believing in Miami. and after that, I mean, yes, could Miami win the Coastal? The Miami could win the Coastal, and I still wouldn't believe in them. All right, that's my point.
You wouldn't believe they had a chance in the Coastal.
I would just say I still don't believe they're like a for like. What do they got to do? 7-5 to win the Coastal?
Yeah, seriously. I mean, here's the thing: is they're just they're not putting the players on the field. They even if they have decent recruiting rankings, you're not seeing Sean Taylor and
Edgerrin James, and
Roscoe
stuff.
Parrish being their number 3 receiver and shit.
I will say that De'Aaron King is fun to watch, and I just saw a column today. Now the column was about a month old, but apparently his rehab is going splendid, and there's a chance he could be out there against Alabama. If so, I think he at least gives them a chance. I also saw that Miami is expected to have a top 3 offensive line in the ACC. Their running backs are good and the receivers are good, and that tight end Mallory is going to step right in to where Brevin Jordan was. So they have some interesting pieces. You know, the defense needs to play better. They need to play more consistent. You know, in 1 week Miami looks really good. The next week they're getting just whipped by UNC. They're interesting. I still say they're interesting coming into the year.
They're the same team as Arizona. They're like the Arizona State, where it's like, yeah, they got talent, and it's
that
like,
is kind of where they've gone to. Unfortunately, although I'm still with Nick, I'm still buying into that upside.
Well, I'm not buying into the upside of De'Aaron King playing week 1 because he's going to get destroyed whether they play or not.
How sorry do you feel for the backup? I think his name's like Van Dyke or something. I don't think he's ever got a snap in, as far as I know, to go up against Alabama.
Yeah, pretty horrible. And their away games. I mean, I'll give Miami this. This is a tough schedule. They got 10 Power 5s, and then App State, and then Central Connecticut State. But drawing also, they draw NC State from the other side of the conference, and then obviously Florida State. But I just don't see. Look at their away games. If you look at these away games, if you're throwing Bama and there's a neutral site, you got Bama, North Carolina, Pitt, Florida State, and Duke. Well, Duke's easy, but I don't think they're going to win at Pitt. I know we covered that on the week-to-week thing. I think at North Carolina is tough. They get a bye before it, which helps. But I don't know. I just don't think I think they're going to be like 7-5, 8-4.
Dude, I just watched one of those like condensed the game last year, UVA versus Miami. That game was, the UVA had a touchdown called back, bullshit touchdown called back. They're not much better than anyone else in that division. I would love to see Miami be the 2002 Miami Hurricanes and play against Clemson and give us fucking, Alabama, LSU in the ACC. It's just not going to happen right now, unfortunately.
Yeah,
agreed.
So let's talk. North Carolina. Are you guys buying the hype? You buying it, Patty C? Or are you selling it?
I'm selling it.
I'm selling it too, Nick.
I mean, I guess to a degree. Right now, they'd be my pick to win the Coastal.
Agreed.
Now, I don't think they're gonna like sniff the playoffs or anything. I think they're probably gonna go 9-3.
Yeah, which I think would be the under.
Right, because I think it's at 10 or it's at 9.5.
I think it's at 9.5 or 10.
Big ass expectations for North Carolina.
I mean, if I had to blindly pick who wins the Coastal, I would pick them, but I don't feel great about that pick.
No, I don't.
This is a team, and I think once again, I think they have tough away games. If they lose to Virginia Tech out the gate, they're at Virginia Tech. They lost a ton of production last year. You lose that.
I can't wait to watch that game. Lane Stadium is going to be rocking.
But if they lose that's a divisional game. And I got news for you on a short week in November. They play at Pitt. I think that's a tough road game. They also play at NC State. Those are all in conference. They also play at Notre Dame out of conference. But I just think it's a tricky road slate. Their only like for sure road win would be Georgia Tech. So and even that, I feel like Georgia Tech could be improved and kind of stay close with them. I think North Carolina wins that, but it wouldn't shock me if that's a 28-21 game because North Carolina's defense was really bad last year. Wake stayed in that thing. Wake put 52 points on them.
Yeah, I'd say more 58-51.
Yeah,
wouldn't surprise me.
Well, you mentioned the team who could surprise people. That's Pitt.
Yeah.
So I think Pitt in conference. First off, they get both UNC and Miami at home.
Great schedule.
And their road trip at Virginia Tech, they have a bye before it.
They draw Clemson, but they get Clemson in Pittsburgh, which actually I believe has never happened.
Is that true?
So I was told when I was on the Clemson podcast that Clemson has never played at Pittsburgh.
Too bad it's not like a November game or something. I think in what mid to late October, it's not like you have the high grass and you have the wind, but it's not like it's going to be that cold.
Yeah, but still, I do think Pitt is a team that I think they're the true wild card, and I think I know you asked before, like what's their ceiling? I think their ceiling is winning the Coastal. They got a 6-year senior quarterback. It's another year in Mark Whipple's offense. I think this team, yes, did they lose some players to the NFL on that defense? Sure. They actually had more players drafted than Clemson. A lot of people don't know that. And I think they could. I mean, I like where they catch North Carolina short week on a Thursday night in Heinz Field. I like them. Actually, they get Clemson, Miami, and North Carolina all in Heinz Field. So I mean, if they can protect home,
Still, that's a brutal stretch.
it is. It
At
is.
Virginia Tech, Clemson, and Miami consecutive weeks. When the conference was constructed as it currently is, those were 3 of the 4 teams they envisioned as the powerhouses. Ugh.
Yeah.
Let me say this. Weather in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, average temperatures 60 in October, high of 63, low of 45, right? In November. Now this game's October 23rd, so getting towards that November range. High of 51, low of 37.
Well, and for North Carolina, November 11th.
That's that's big.
Maybe
Yeah.
it starts to get a little cold there
No, but I think, would you guys agree ceiling is winning the Coastal?
for Pitt.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And if you want an even longer shot, then you got to talk about Patty C's boys, UVA.
Aha.
And I like it.
I think they have a shot. They have their whole offensive line returning, most of the defense, including that their best DB, that safety Joey Blunt, who missed most of last year with an injury. And if you look at last year, they went through a 4-game losing streak in October. Well, Brennan Armstrong missed at least 2 of those games, if not like 2.5, because I think he got hurt in one of them. If they win half those games instead of losing all 4 of them, then they had a really good year last year. So I think UVA could make some noise this year.
Are you talking about the defending Coastal champions?
Technically, right?
Yeah, it's just like their basketball year, right? They're the last team to win the Coastal.
They had that for like 3 or 4 different sports where they had some significant like victory that lasted several years. Championship.
But I think Nick makes a great point here. I mean, you look at the schedule, they've had North Carolina's number. You let them win that September 18th game.
4 in a row.
I mean, I don't see like what's the clear cut loss. And now obviously they're not going to go. I doubt they go undefeated. But I can see them beating Miami.
Yeah, Mendenhall could claws. I mean, he had good quarterback play from who's the transfer from Arizona State a couple years back. Drawing a blank on his name.
Oh man, he's in. Yeah.
But he was really good. And let me tell you this, Nick. I love
Bryce Perkins.
Got it. Nice.
There you go.
Yeah.
I love your flag plant, Nick, on UVA and on Brennan Armstrong. And I was when I was watching that condensed UVA Miami game. He's sneaky, man. He gets.
There we go.
Yeah, he gets
He is such a Bronco Mendenhall
by the
quarterback.
hair of his teeth. Whereas Perkins would like gash you for like a 60-yard run, Brennan Armstrong would gash you for a 20-yard run by sneaking just beyond your gas. He's got sneaky speed, and so that's just enough with that defense to make them win close games.
I'll make this prediction: they're gonna get one of these teams that we're not expecting. And by the way, I don't know if you guys remember this, but Mendenhall has really done well against Mac Brown. He's kind of the guy that got him fired at Texas when he ran for like 400 yards against them, right? Remember they went up and played in Provo.
Yeah,
got fucked up by Bronco Mendenhall.
Won both of those games in that series.
Yeah,
right?
they won both those games in that series. So I mean, I do think they're going to get one of them. They're a sneaky team because they're fundamentally sound and they're tough.
The Coastal's going to be a shit show again.
That's why it's not as interesting to me. Is it? I mean,
That's
it's
why
interesting.
it is more interesting because every game counts. Every week in, week out, you're jockeying for position down the stretch. Teams need wins. I mean, it's a lot of fun, man.
It's like when the Seahawks make the playoffs at like 6-10 in the NFC West. You know what I mean? I feel like that's the watching the Coastal.
See, Colby loves this like at certain points, and then at other points he's completely disinterested in it.
Well, I think I'm just disinterested because it's like Miami should be good. You know what I mean?
It's
Virginia Tech.
disappointing.
It's just like what do we have?
You could kind of make the same argument for like the Pac-12 South.
That's true.
But at
USC
least
should
that's
be good.
quality football.
Yeah, no, but I actually think Utah is for real. Like Utah is what Virginia Tech to me was like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
You can make the same argument for the Big Ten West, other than some Wisconsin teams.
But they play up. My point is the ACC teams play down. They play down to me. That's the difference. Like the Big Ten, it's like Northwestern and Wisconsin and Iowa are always playing
above
up.
their level. Yeah.
And that's what the same with Utah.
That's very
That's
true.
what I'm saying. Like
North Carolina should be way better. Miami should be way better. Virginia Tech should be
even
way
like
better.
Pitt should be better.
Yeah.
It's like Pitt had more players drafted than Clemson. How are you 6-6 every year? You know what I mean? Like that's
It's like 6 teams shitting. There's 7 teams
that's
shitting
what I'm
the bed.
saying is like that's my point exactly is like the Big Ten West, you see classic teams overachieve almost every year. You know what I mean? Like they're playing way beyond their level. Pac-12 South, yes, you have the USC UCLA angle, so I think it'd probably compare there. But I also think Utah plays way past their level, and I even think take Colorado last year. Carl Durrell played way past their level. You know, I see the comparison though with the Pac-12
They
South.
are all kind of similar, a little bit.
But I don't know. I just don't find. I think it's just that. It's like for years, and I feel like it's the hype. For years, I've been hearing about Miami. I guess I could say the same about USC, but USC actually lived up for it more recently.
The Big Ten West, you never think Wisconsin's not getting hyped to win the national championship every year.
They were talking like, Miami's going to beat Bama. I'm like, shut up. I've seen like experts say, I'm like, until you like, they just what
isn't part of that just to like get clicks and just to make a hot take.
Maybe.
Do they really think that?
I think a lot of these people believe it.
I think they believe it too. I mean, I think it's like Texas, Miami, and Texas are like the same team to me.
Yeah,
Texas hasn't won a Big 12 championship since 2009, and it's like they're living on this rep.
The name is so
Texas
big.
had what 4 losing seasons in the past decade.
You know, that's probably what Notre Dame was like in the 90s when you started to hate them. You know, was when like they had the whole 80s or whatever, their whole like history in the background. Everyone thought, oh, it's Notre Dame, they're gonna come up, and it's like, how many times do I have to watch this team fucking not meet like expectations?
I mean, what I think Miami's 1-2 in the past 2 years against the Conference USA,
including a shutout loss.
And I got to listen to this shit every year. You know what I mean? And look, I'm almost just like just someone step up to the plate and challenge Clemson. You know what I mean? I think that's the frustrating part. This is probably why I think it's worse than the Pac-12 South, is because there is no Clemson in the Pac-12. So it's like, okay, we're gonna get 2 random teams. So that's kind of exciting. Like this is like, no, I need someone to step up to the plate and play with Clemson.
And in the Big 12, at least like USC has won 6 straight conference titles, but at least there's competition.
Not USC
or
Oklahoma.
rather.
Yeah, there's competition. Yeah, I mean that was a close game last year.
ACC is boring,
dude. You go back and look at what 2019 Virginia schedule. You're gonna say or the ACC schedule. I think Clemson beats the team in the ACC championship by like 47 points. You know what I mean?
Similar to what Ohio State does.
That's kind of
that
true.
was actually a game last year though with Northwestern.
Yeah, it's a little closer in the Big Ten, but yeah, Ohio State's dominance in the Big Ten it makes that conference kind of boring.
I'm just saying
you could argue the same thing Alabama does to the SEC East too, with the exception of maybe one Georgia game, or you have to go back like 10 years to have
But that Florida game was a 7-point game last year, dude.
Never within. I mean, it was never. Bama
it's true,
but not like, dude. Go back
at least
and
it's
look.
Georgia and LSU and Florida, like teams that can potentially win national championships. That
Hold on, look at this.
Whipping the shit out of.
Look at this. Last year's ACC championship was a 24-point difference, and even that I think was some getting some garbage points there.
That's close for the
yeah.
ACC
That's what I'm saying. You go back the year before, 62-17, 62-17, guys. Then when you go back the year before, I think that leads to my disliking of the Coastal. Is it's like, come on.
You know what's funny is that usually in these games you always pick against Clemson. And I'm like, Colby, when are you going to learn?
I think it's because I'm hoping. Look, Pitt loses 42-10. All these ones are royal ass whoopings. Is there ever been a close? I mean, how long ago was an ACC like what Georgia Tech and Wake Forest? Look, 38-3 when Miami went there, 38-3 and 17. I mean, these are horrible games. They're absolutely horrible football games.
Don't bet on it when your heart's in it. That's the lesson to be learned. I think we've all
Virginia Tech had the best showing. And
they actually played them pretty well.
It was actually a 7-point loss. That was kind of like the Florida version, but that was 6 years ago, guys.
Yeah.
I don't know. What should we get to our predictions here?
Yeah.
Are we all going Clemson, North Carolina?
Very chalky.
All right, screw it. I can't go with the Tar Heels. I don't like those guys. I don't like that shade of blue. Give me Pitt. Give me Clemson Pitt.
Fuck, man, you want me? I want to do that, but I'm saying like, can Pitt really do that? They're probably going to lose to like Georgia Tech on October 2nd.
But it's a podcast. You're not putting any money behind it, so you can pick whoever the hell you want. You can pick Georgia Tech to win the Coastal.
You know what? Give me the Hokies. I think they beat North Carolina on Friday, September 3rd. They got a nice setup. Yes, they have to win at Miami. We
haven't talked much about them.
Yeah, we haven't talked much about. Let me ask you this, guys: if they go 0-1 against North Carolina, and then they get upset, let me ask you this: if they start out 1-2,
he keeps his job through 3 games.
Yeah,
Those are two respectable opponents.
What if they lose to Richmond on September 25th?
If he's 1-3,
Adios.
he might get
yeah,
canned.
because look, I mean, I think the FCS played JMU beat Virginia Tech at Virginia Tech, and I think was it Furman? What was the one that went to like overtime?
Well, they lost to ODU, right?
They lost to ODU, but that's an FBS.
Oh,
But they had one where they needed, I think, a field goal or a comeback to beat like I think it was Furman.
I
or
don't know if you
Citadel or
mentioned
something.
it, but they did lose to JMU.
Yes, I mentioned that. I mentioned
well,
that. Yes.
I just want to reiterate that Virginia
Yes.
Tech lost to James Madison University.
Virginia Tech, Clemson, ACC championship. Clemson wins by 21.
Yeah, I mean,
I will say Tech. So through the first, I think it's the first 8 weeks of the season, they only have one road game, which is that out of conference one against WVU,
Which doesn't hurt their chances of playing the ACC championship.
So maybe they can get some momentum, and maybe Braxton Burmeister can gain some confidence, and maybe they'll surprise us.
I mean, look, if you look at their away
that's
games in general, yeah,
6 home games out of their first 7.
and when you look at the fact their away games are at Georgia Tech, they should be better than Georgia Tech. At Boston College, not a crazy home environment. At Miami, not a crazy home environment. At Virginia, rivalry game, you should be the
But
more
not a
talented
crazy
team.
home
Yes,
environment.
yes.
But they do have 2 back-to-back road games in the second half of the year.
Yeah,
That is true. That is very true.
for the last 5 games on the road.
It's a weird schedule.
Against a bunch of teams that fucking hate them. Boston College, Miami, and UVA all on the road. You better bet they're going to get their best shot from each of those teams. Could be a rough year for.
Who you taking? You taking North Carolina? You going chalk?
I'm going Hokies too.
Well, all right. Well, I thought everybody was going to take UNC. So if that's the case, I'm jumping back on the Tar Heel bandwagon.
Well, honestly,
UNC.
my logic for taking Virginia Tech was that if Virginia Tech beats them week 1, where I feel like UNC's got to replace these players, they'll have an upper edge on that. The tiebreaker will go to them, and North Carolina's road schedule within the conference, I think, is much harder than Virginia Tech's.
Well,
That's a huge game.
I don't root for the Hokies often, but I will be pulling for them opening week.
Yes.
Here's the thing. I think Phil Longo is going to be way too much for Justin Hamilton. I think he's going to dice him up from a X's and O's standpoint.
But you see my point though.
He did last year.
And don't forget, Patty, that they lose a ton of skill position guys, but they get all 5 offensive linemen back and Sam Howell back. That can go a long way in of itself.
Yeah, if North Carolina wins, I think that.
But that defense, you lose Chaz Surratt, your best defensive player, and that was a horrible defense. Now,
That's true.
You have been recruiting better, but that defense was trash last year.
So was Virginia Tech's. I mean,
true, but Virginia Tech. I mean, I think Virginia Tech has a legit pass on how many players they had out, how many coaches they had out. I'm just saying, if Virginia, what's that?
This is the same Hokie defense that gave up 45 to Clemson, 47 to Pitt, and 56 to UNC last year. I understand the COVID problems. That's not going to be an issue this year, but it's not like this is the old Frank Beamer and Bud Foster defense of 10 years ago.
Yeah. Now I'll say this though, dude, I'm telling you, Hokie fans should circle if they can win week 1. I love their positioning for coming out of the Coastal.
It's a huge game.
But you get Pitt at home, you get Syracuse. Like even if you'll have the tiebreaker, and North Carolina still has to play Miami, Pitt. I mean, like I keyed in on those away games for North Carolina at Pitt, at NC State. Those are very losable games for North Carolina.
And for Tech, it just sets up well where they get the bye before Notre Dame. I mean that may or may not be a win, but if Notre Dame's not quite to the level they were at. If Tech gets that win, that's huge momentum
that's what I'm saying.
on their
Week 1
season.
is gigantic.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Sounds like
gigantic.
an interesting divisional race here.
Hello. The more we talk about it, the more interesting it becomes. That's for sure.
But let me ask you this, Nick: if Virginia Tech wins, what's that Clemson Virginia Tech score in the ACC championship?
Oh, I mean, non-competitive, 42-17.
See, because at least that Pac-12 South winner, I think, actually has a shot to beat Washington or Oregon or whoever gets there. But we'll get. What's that?
Go ahead, man.
I was gonna say before we get to there, let's tell you guys that the college football experience is brought to you by WinBet. Yes, WinBet is bringing you the action of real sports betting with the Win Las Vegas experience. Get in on all your favorite teams, players, and sports games. Generous promos, odds, and parlays are happening right now at WinBet. Get started today and you'll receive a special offer of up to a $500 risk-free sports bet. Terms and conditions apply. Get the details at wynnbet.com. That's WYNN bet.com and download the app today. All right. Well, look, if we're going to hop over and talk a little bit of the second to last rated Power 5 conference by Patty C and myself based on, and I think what NC Nick would probably agree with what we have going here, is the Pac-12. And I think the Pac-12 is I think the Pac-12 and ACC are very close to one another. The only thing we mentioned this Pac-12 doesn't have Clemson, but they also don't have a Syracuse. So this conference is compelling. We've touched on this before, Nick. What's your take on the Pac? Let's start with the Pac-12 South. This is you can make a case for what? Every team minus Arizona?
Yeah, exactly. I still don't quite believe in Arizona State, but they're right there too. I mean,
they're still they're a really hard team to beat in the desert, in my opinion.
Right. No, I agree. No, really, those 5 schools other than Arizona, they all have legitimate chances. Once again, like we alluded to talking about the ACC, there's no dominant team in the Pac-12 South. So if you're looking to place a future on one of these schools, good luck, because it's really a 1 in 5 chance.
I mean, I think the big storylines though are the LA schools, because both coaches under a lot of heat. They gotta put up or shut up this year.
Right.
I think the other storyline is what Kyle Whittingham continues to overachieve, and then Carl Durrell, like, can you keep up? They overachieved by a ton last year. Can you keep that up? Not knowing the new quarterback situation, so that could be tricky. But I think there'll be a player somewhat. But then the Arizona State issue. Talk about a team with first off, they're under scandal right now. There's a scandal going on right now.
Yeah.
But they're always this team. They're Miami, where you could say, well, fuck, they could win they could win the whole Pac-12. They really could. Yeah. But they could also be 4-8.
I think my Arizona State is what will happen to Miami in like another 30 years of the same exact thing, where it's like you finally write them off. You finally just say, okay, sure, they should. Everything is there that should result in a conference championship and maybe even a playoff run, but they just don't do it for whatever reason. So I'm not at all interested in Arizona State. I mean, maybe as a divisional winner, but I can't even see them winning the conference. I can't see them beating Oregon or Washington or even another team that emerges.
You can see them winning the South, though.
I can see them winning the South. So it's kind of interesting. I mean, they're a fun team. They should be a really fun team to watch every year.
The team
Arizona State led the Pac-12 in scoring last year, averaging 40 points a game. So there's something. I mean, granted, the game against Arizona helped inflate those stats.
That was your game of the year, buddy.
I beat you to the punch. I knew you were going to bring it up at some point.
Well played.
Yeah. Now, the team I like most, to be honest with you, in the Pac-12 South is the Utah Utes. I think Utah's the best team. I think I heard many people say this is Kyle Whittingham's most talented team.
Wow.
And you look at the schedule. Yes, they do have 2 sets of back-to-back away games, which is tricky. But I think they're winnable away games, with the exception of at USC, which they always seem to squander. But they've gotten closer and closer in that battle. I think they can afford to lose that USC game. I expect USC to lose twice within conference. And I think they'll be okay. And I also think you want to talk about a home environment where they have a clear-cut edge.
Recently expanded stadium, 6,000 seats added.
6,000 Mormons added.
Yeah, let me tell you about when I looked at that stadium, I thought I was looking at a fake picture in terms of it being super steep like Virginia Tech. It's like, whoa, the reason why you combine the altitude with the steepness and the acoustics of that stadium, and you add some seats to that
and some weather, perhaps,
it becomes a really hard place to win.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like I look at this and I'm like, okay, where's their Pac-12 losses? You're telling me that Arizona State, UCLA, and Oregon and Colorado, which are their four contenders there, have to win in Salt Lake City? I like Utah's chances in all of those games. Their away games within conference. By the way, Washington State also goes to Salt Lake City. Their away games in conference are at USC, at Oregon State, at Stanford, at Arizona. Stanford and Arizona don't really scare me. It's the at USC, at Oregon. I expect them to lose at USC.
Yeah.
It's that they can't afford that other road loss. So that Oregon State game is the tricky one to me, and maybe you could make the case for the Stanford one.
Stanford may not be a hostile environment, but they're a good team still.
You buy that a little more than me, but
4-2, 4-2.
What do you guys make of my Utah case? I think they're the best team in the Pac-12 South, and I think they'll be playing for the Pac-12 South or for the Pac-12 championship.
Nick, what do you got for us?
If I'm not mistaken, they played for the championship last year, right?
No, that was
2 years
USC.
ago.
USC and
2 years ago is what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
2 years ago they got beat by Oregon.
They got whooped, but
Yeah.
you know, they I was surprised by that. I felt they were a more competitive team.
Yeah, I mean, so I've been flying the UCLA flag, but they just have such a tough schedule. You know, in conference, I kind of think that the top 3 schools in the South are UCLA, USC, and Utah.
Agreed.
And UCLA gets 2 of those. You know, the 2 schools they're playing both on the road at Utah, at USC. You know, is it that much of a disadvantage for the UCLA game, the UCLA USC game to be at USC? You could argue that maybe, but I think even though I'm a big fan of UCLA this year, I think their schedule is a little too tough. So that leads me to saying either USC or Utah.
And UCLA draws, I think, the hardest teams from the North. They get Washington at Washington, home to Oregon, by the way, and those are back-to-back weeks. They also get Cal and Stanford. There's a good chance that those are the top 4 teams in the North, based on history. Like that, those would be the top 4 teams in the North.
Yeah. So if it comes down to USC and Utah, I just trust the Utah program more. So I'm going to ride with you there, Colby D.
Wow.
There we go. Look, USC, their schedule does break nice for them with the fact that, but I still think they have that brutal back-to-back stretch of at Arizona State, at Cal, where I think they're very capable of losing both. Now they were lucky they don't draw Washington or Oregon, which is unbelievable.
Huge.
Unbelievable. Once again, I feel like the protection committee.
I feel like that can't be something that's like the protection committee. I feel like that has to be part of a rotation of games.
Well, either way, I still feel like at Arizona State and at Cal, 2 dangerous games where they could fall. They also play. I mean, maybe at Wazoo. I do think it's a bet. They have a nice schedule. The
You
way
guys
it sets
take your Utah hype, which has never existed. Utah, one of the like least sexy, most disrespected teams in all of college football. And shove it up your ass because USC is winning this division.
They're going to lose twice.
And
USC will lose twice in
the
conference.
Coliseum, a harder place to play than people give it credit for. They just think, oh, you lose it against USC because they're good. No, USC plays exceptionally well at the Coliseum too.
You know who's going to get them though? They're going to lose one of those at Arizona State and at Cal games, maybe both. And if not both, UCLA is going to in the season finale.
Well, like Nick said, it's a shit show. You got 5 teams that have equal chance of winning this thing. So who really knows?
I like Utah's chances. I think Utah and USC are the 2. I think there's
right.
you draw a line after that, and then you say Arizona State or Colorado or UCLA.
What is it? Jalen Daniels at Jaden Daniels.
Yeah.
Millennial.
Do we want to open up the Arizona State door or no?
No.
Okay. Let's move along then. Let me
fuck Arizona State. Let me say a couple storylines I think could be interesting in the Pac-12 real quick. Hot seat carousel, Edwards, Helton, and Kelly specifically. We'll see how those progress over the season. Could be interesting. Early season non-conference tilts. Oregon, Ohio State, Washington, Michigan, Notre Dame, USC, kind of mid-season play.
All of those for the Pac-12 on the road though. That's horrible.
Yeah, tough.
They're not going to
draw
win
there, but if they do, then it's a nice look for the conference. Maybe enough
they're not going to win.
Bump them into the playoffs. Probably not. Maybe Washington.
Maybe
beats
Washington beats Michigan, but I'm saying Oregon's not going to beat Ohio State, and I doubt USC.
Notre Dame,
beats Notre
USC.
Dame. Yeah.
Notre Dame's probably slight edge. And last thing, sleepers rising to the top. Your guys, Cal, Oregon State. Couple.
Well,
teams.
that's what I'm saying. Pac-12 North.
Yeah.
Is more interesting.
We haven't gotten there yet.
No, I'm saying Pac-12 North is more interesting than the Pac-12 South to me.
Yeah.
Because the North, I think everyone. I mean, I was surprised. Phil Steele, we had him on the show. Go listen to that episode. But his publication was the first one to really go out on a limb, and because everything else was saying Oregon's winning the Pac-12 North. Well, no, Phil Steele has Washington, and he has them as a top 10 team.
Well, we went through the schedule earlier, and I believe we both agreed that Washington looked like the favorite based on the schedule.
Well, they also won the North last year, but
True.
they didn't play for it.
Little detail.
But
The schedule breaks very nicely for Washington.
yeah, they avoid playing USC or Utah.
Right.
Or
They
they get Arizona State, Oregon, and UCLA all in Husky Stadium.
Right. Their road trips aren't that bad. At Oregon State, at Arizona, at Stanford, at Colorado.
It's pretty
The last time they played in Colorado, we went to that game.
No. That was 2 times ago. The last time they played in Colorado, they actually took a loss.
Really? Yeah.
The Pac-12,
time flies too quickly.
Well, the Pac-12 they play more frequently. They grab
Either way, Washington should probably be favored on the road in all of those games.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I think that Stanford's kind of gave them a hard time too. But
give me a game they're not going to be favored in.
the Michigan one, but even Phil Steele said he thinks by the time that kickoff happens, he thinks Washington. He wouldn't be surprised if Washington's a 1 or 2 point favorite.
I was listening to Andy Staples' podcast. They're trying to track it down themselves. -1 on one side, -1 on the other side. You know, I think Vegas has no fucking clue what's going on with that game. So
Yeah.
I was specifically talking about conference games, but even that one, I mean, I think I'm going to pick Washington.
Yeah,
me too.
Yeah. So are we all? I mean, because it seemed like everyone was on Oregon. I think if you think Oregon's got that game at Utah on November 20th, which seems like a cold day to go to Salt Lake City. They also got to play at Washington. Oregon's away games to me at a conference at Ohio State, but then you have at Stanford, at UCLA, at Washington, and at Utah. I expect all 4 of those teams to be bowling.
And part of that is the big one is Oregon, Washington, where Washington gets Oregon at home, and that could decide the division right there.
Yeah.
So you guys got Washington, Utah.
I mean, I think Washington, Utah is my Pac-12 championship, but let's make the case for a couple other Pac-12 North teams here, because I do think the wrench in this whole. I don't think it's Stanford. I think Stanford could be.
Yeah.
I think the real wrench is Cal.
What about Oregon?
No, we just talked about Oregon.
You think it's too hard?
No, did you just listen to what I was saying? Where their away games? Their away games are at Stanford, at UCLA, at Washington, at Utah. I expect all 4 to be bowl teams. That's a pretty brutal away game stretch.
So they're out.
No, I'm not saying they're out. They're definitely alive.
So are they not the number 2 threat for the division then?
Yes, that's what I just said.
Oh, well, I am a fucking idiot and I missed that. So
I said besides Washington and Oregon, let's not flush out the rest of the teams.
Okay, fair enough.
Because I think the real wrench in this situation is the Cal Golden Bears. They're a very experienced team. They had issues last year that I don't think represent how good they are. And I think they have a good spot. I mean, yes, they get a bye week before going to at Oregon, but I still expect them to lose at Oregon. But I think actually that's the game that Washington will trip up. They've actually had Washington's number lately, so I think that's a dangerous spot.
This Cal,
yeah, they beat Washington the past couple times.
That's true. That is true. Close games, but they've come away.
Cal
with
doesn't
win.
beat anybody by a lot of points.
Right.
They're a grinded out team. They're kind of like a Big Ten team in the Pac-12 right now. But I just think that I actually think make a case for all of them. I actually think there's a wrench. You can make a case for Stanford being the wrench. You can make a case for Washington State. You can make a case for Oregon State. I don't know what to expect in the North. Besides, I think Washington and Oregon have a slight lead on the rest. But I think I would not be surprised if any of those teams came out and ended up, beating Oregon or Washington each week.
Yeah, but I would say Oregon State and Washington State, I think they're going to be good this year. I think they're going to be a lot better. I think they can jump up and bite some teams. I don't think they're good enough to contend for the division just yet.
Yeah, I agree, but I'm just saying there could be enough carnage where,
I don't think
it
Washington
gets tricky.
and Oregon are that far ahead of everyone else.
I don't think they are. I think they are ahead, but I don't think it's that far ahead.
I mean, the games last year are probably a pretty good indication. Oregon was squeaking by some
UCLA. Yeah.
Didn't they?
They got very lucky to beat UCLA.
Wasn't the Washington State game closer than the score?
Yes, definitely.
I'd say you can break this down into 3 levels. You got Washington, Oregon top tier, the mid tier Stanford and Cal, and the bottom tier Oregon State and Washington State. But I do agree, there's not a whole lot of separation between tiers.
I mean, Oregon State should have beaten Washington last year. That was an absolutely horrible spot. Washington won by 6, and that was in Seattle. It came to a 4th and 1. Running back gets like 3 yards. I mean, you want to talk about one of the biggest fucking conspiracies. I don't know how. I showed you this. He gets 3 yards, and it's like, so that was the final score was 27-21. Washington ended up getting points there. That game was over. They get that first down.
Oh, Oregon State had the lead.
21-20. If they get that first down, that game is over.
Yeah.
There's not a big line. That's the Oregon State was the team that finished last in the Pac-12 North last year. It was a 6-point game.
Very chippy division. Very chippy division.
That's why I find this division more interesting than the South.
We were just talking about the Pac-12 South having the parity that's comparable to the Big Ten West and the ACC Coastal, but maybe the Big Ten or the Pac-12 North is actually the.
Well, I think everyone's got, like I said before, I read Phil Steele's magazine. Everyone had Oregon just winning this thing. And the Steele comes
That's
out,
crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. There's no way they are head and shoulders above Washington or anybody else. But in general, my preference as far as watching games, for whatever reason, I go towards the North. I don't know if it's because there's elements. I think the games are more exciting. I don't know. For some reason, that bright, shiny, sunny day in USC or Arizona State or UCLA, for some reason, the North, those games just seem more interesting and more fun to watch for whatever reason.
Well, winter is coming for Nick Dan.
Well, maybe just because football is meant to be played with the elements, Patty C. There we go.
Hello.
There we go. No, I agree. The North is more interesting to me. Patty C, what do you think is more interesting for you this year, the North or the South?
Well, I'll tell you this. I was just watching that Oregon Pac-12 or Oregon USC game from 2012. Was it Lane Kiffin versus, I don't know if Chip Kelly was still there. He may have
Kelly, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it was just like a 62-51 final, but every single play was like this lights out offensive play. And it was like,
I don't think it's like that anymore though.
I mean, it was entertaining in a way, but at the same time it was boring because it was like
too much offense is a bad thing.
But
tackle someone.
Yes, but I would argue that it's completely different now because even with Cristobal, they're a completely different team now than what they used to be as far as like their defensive team, grounded pound.
Well, that was just to say
Cal is defensive team.
That was the sunshine day that Nick was talking about, traditional Pac-12 football. But yeah, the North has developed into kind of like a traditional Northern kind of conference, like the Big Ten. Yeah, and they're playing ground and pound. It's a fun conference to watch, a fun division to watch.
In general, I mean, Colby loves to watch like a 10-7 game. Colby's favorite game was that Wake Forest Virginia Tech game that went 0-0 into overtime.
I gotta be honest, I was watching it and I loved it. I was taking photos. I was texting our boy Matt, is a Virginia Tech fan. I was saying, "Hey, what the hell you celebrating 0-0? You crazy bastards!"
Patty C, what is your the best score for a football game? Best score for a football game? Give me 21-20.
I'm at
I would go a little more offense. I would go 31-27 or something.
I'm at 17-14. 17-14.
Yeah, maybe a little more offense. Maybe
that's
27.
Too much defense.
Actually,
27-24.
Actually, you know what I want? I want 17-13 because I want them to go up 14-13.
And have to go for it.
Yes, and then maybe add a field goal, and then they're exactly.
So add a field goal. Was that Pitt or BC when they were down 4 and they went?
It was Pitt against Penn State. It's like 2 minutes left. They're down 4. They kick a field goal from the 1 yard line. Like a minute and 48 seconds left. We had Jim McMahon on the show this week, and he was like, "Buddy Ryan, great." One of the best coordinators ever, but horrible football coach. Because he would say this. He sounded like Narduzzi. Yeah. He was like, with 2 minutes left, you'd be down 7. And he'd be like, "We're gonna punt. Our defense is gonna score." Right. So so there we go. So Pac-12 North, Patty C. What's your Pac-12 championship? Ours is.
I almost agree with you guys. I almost want for the sake of difference, I'll say Washington, USC. But really, I think you guys are probably right. Washington, Utah seems like it's going to be the.
I could totally see USC doing it too. So
yeah, they get them at home. So
yeah, definitely. So all right, folks. I want to tell you guys that the college football experience is brought to you by PropSwap. Yes, it's America's #1 app to buy and sell sports bets. Find the best odds on NBA championship or MLB futures when you buy directly from other bettors on PropSwap. See a ticket you like but think the price is too high? Well, guess what? Submit a bid for a price that you think is fair, then buy it. Every ticket purchase on PropSwap can be resold at any time with one click of a button, and PropSwap gives you a suggested price tool to essentially let you know how much your ticket is worth. 2 weeks ago, a PropSwap customer sold a $500 40-1 Phoenix Suns championship ticket for $16,000 after the Suns went up 2-0. He's looking great because the Suns lost that NBA Finals. With PropSwap, your bet doesn't need to win in order to make money; it just needs to improve. Think of it like a stock market, but for sports betting. Use the promo code SGP on your first deposit. Receive up to $500 in bonus cash. Go to PropSwap.com or download the PropSwap app today.
That's true. Talk about an ad read that really sells itself.
Yeah,
this guy bought a future on the Suns winning the championship.
Sold it for $16,000. Right, and when they were up 2-0.
Yeah,
and then what a great sell. What a great sell. So let's hop on over now. Let's talk Big 12 football. Believe it or not, Nick, Big 12 Colby did not put the Big 12 above the Big 10
or the SEC. Wow, I thought you'd have them first.
But the Big 12, Oklahoma seems to be as much as a contender as they've ever been, and now you have Iowa State showing up to the party. A lot of hype around the Cyclones. You got Texas. Is Texas back? Speaking of Miami and Arizona State talk, I feel like Texas can go right there with them. But is Texas back, Patty C?
No. How can you be back when you have a new coach that's never proven shit?
Yeah.
What an asinine question.
You got Gundy flying under the radar. You got Gary Patterson flying under the radar. You got Kansas State. They're always chippy. You got Leopold. The floor is going to go up. I'm telling you, it's going to be a little bit up.
Only in Colby Dan's mind is that a fucking noteworthy storyline.
You got West Virginia stay under the radar.
A little bit up could be a 1-win season.
That's true. That's true.
Sick burn.
So, and that 1 win would be at Duke. So there you go. There you go.
Rat-a-tat-tat.
But I'm a Coastal Carolina fan.
But I think overall this conference, West Virginia kind of a dark horse. No one's seeing coming. Competitive. Texas Tech, Matt Wells, make or break year for him. That could be a big storyline. Obviously, no divisions here. They got to run the gauntlet. Dave Aranda, year 2 at Baylor. What do you guys make of the Big 12? Can you talk about
Max Duggan at TCU?
I said Gary Patterson. Yes,
he is. Yeah, part of it. That's true. I want a resurgence. What do you think about the Big 12, Nick?
Yeah, I was telling you guys all off season that I'm high on Oklahoma this year. Then I listened to the Phil Steele podcast and I feel justified. I feel even more confident that the Sooners are in for a big season. Iowa State might be the nicer story, the little school from out in the middle of nowhere, but I think Oklahoma is going to be in the playoff this year.
Oh, I think you're definitely right. And when you look, maybe bring up my metrics of back-to-back away games. Oklahoma 0, Iowa State. They have 2 sets of back-to-back away games. I actually am going to make this prediction. As much as I like what Iowa State's doing, landed a couple 4-stars in the past 2 weeks, really changing that culture. And I love what Matt Campbell said at Media Day. But I'm going to make a prediction that they're not even going to play for the Big 12 championship. But if they do, I expect them to beat Oklahoma.
Well, that begs the question: who will?
Well, I mean, it really comes down to Iowa State still very much could, but I think it comes down to some of those away games that they have on their schedule. Because, like I said, getting those they have 2 sets of back-to-back away games. That's tricky. I would say, TCU, West Virginia. I think Oklahoma State completely flying under the radar, and I think Texas still. I think those 4 teams. Maybe you could try to tell me that K-State might be a team that could find themselves in the mix. I think this is one of the most compelling things in college football this year is who's the team I want to see. I mean, I've been saying this all year. I think Iowa State's the most interesting team in college football because we're going to see if they're going to really be able to do this. And if they can, maybe, then great. That's great. A great storyline for college football. But I think they got
schedule is so brutal.
Yeah. Their away games of at K-State, at West Virginia, at Oklahoma. I just think they're gonna lose a couple of those, and then that opens the door for TCU, Texas, West Virginia, Oklahoma State, and even Kansas State.
Even Lubbock is tricky, man.
Yeah.
That Texas game last year where they went to what? Triple over?
Yeah, triple overtime.
That was in Lubbock?
Yeah, it was in Lubbock.
Yeah,
I'll say this to counterbalance your point about the tough schedule. While I agree it is a tough schedule, I think the top competition other than Oklahoma is probably Texas and Oklahoma State. And Iowa State gets both those teams at home.
I was going to say TCU, and they get them at home too. So I do think Iowa State's going to make it. I think it may be with 2 losses.
Don't sleep on West Virginia. I love the way the West Virginia schedule lines up. I think Neil Brown, year 3, he made a big jump at Troy. Watch out. Look, I expect West Virginia to lose to Oklahoma on Saturday, September 25th. But after that, their away games are not as brutal as one think. They look at who they play at home.
It's a beautifully constructed schedule.
West Virginia gets at home Iowa State, Oklahoma State, and Texas. Keep an eye out on the Mountaineers. I'm telling you, I think their schedule breaks nice for them. They have 0 back-to-back away games. I just could totally see a case where no one's talking about Neil Brown and company and him play. But I do think this is a crapshoot. I think each one of these games, you let West Virginia lose to TCU on October 23rd, which granted they have a bye week before. Maybe TCU then has the upper edge. I mean, this is I just feel like. Do you think Iowa State wins in Morgantown on October 30th? Because if West Virginia can beat them there, they'll have the tiebreaker. And I think both these teams will lose to Oklahoma this year. So then it really creates it opens a different can of worms there.
That could be the game that decides.
Yeah, that really could.
Berth.
And I love the fact it's in Morgantown.
You've been selling West Virginia all off season. I'm not sure if I'm buying yet. This is the same team. Granted, they're very good at home. It's the same team that lost at Texas Tech last year. And it's the same team that Iowa State beat 42-6 on December 5th.
And that was in Ames. But also you got to remember, if there was one place in probably all of America that was affected by not having fans, it was West Virginia. They're going to have fans this year.
I don't know if that's true.
What do you mean? That's one of the most toughest places to win.
It's up there.
Oh,
I mean,
in terms of fans not being there.
Yes, with fans not being there. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. One of the big home field advantages being eliminated.
What'd you think I said?
I thought you meant one of the teams that was most affected by COVID.
No. I'm talking about with fans, their home environment.
Advantage. Sure, I agree with that.
But part of that home field advantage is just the travel to get there. That did not change last year. Yes, completely agree that their game day atmosphere and the fans bring a lot to the table.
Yes,
but part of it is just the travel to get there.
But let me push back on you here because look at that schedule from a season ago. You know, Neil Brown was in year 2. So at Oklahoma State, they lose by 14 week 2. Okay. But after that, it was a 7-point loss at Texas Tech. It was a 4-point loss at Texas. Yes, they got destroyed by Iowa State, but that was in Ames. They got to go to Morgantown this year. I don't see, like, show me the path if you pull up their schedule. I think I know they have an easier schedule than Iowa State because they don't have any back-to-back aways. Iowa State's got 2 sets of them, and they welcome Iowa State to Morgantown. I'm just saying you pull up the 21 schedule for West Virginia. Yes, they could lose. I expect both those teams to lose at Oklahoma. Are we on the same page there?
Yeah, and here's what I'll say about that game. Like, their schedule lines up really nice because before their road games, there's mostly like manageable games that'll get them prepared for it, with the exception of that Virginia Tech Virginia Tech hosting and then going to Oklahoma. But that game's like house money. You beat Virginia Tech, right? And it doesn't even matter if you beat Virginia Tech because it's a non-conference game. Then you go to Oklahoma, you're going to be spent emotionally after playing Virginia Tech. You're going to take an L in Norman, but whatever, you can play them again. The rest of the schedule, though, like you get a pretty nice situation going into every tough road game. So,
yes, I will agree with you guys that the schedule lines up nicely. I just don't know if the team's that good. Last year, West Virginia did not win a road game.
Yeah.
So yeah, if their home atmosphere is great, okay, good. Then win your home games. What are you doing on the road? This year on the road at K-State, at TCU, at Oklahoma, at Baylor.
Look, I'm going to agree with you, Nick.
They could lose 3 of those.
I don't think they're good enough. I don't think they're good enough right now.
They had the 4th best defense in the country last year.
Yeah, and one of the
4th best defense in the country.
Pass defenses in the country.
Number 1 pass defense in the country. Keep an eye on what Neil Brown is doing. I'm telling you, and that team was young.
They always say defense travels, but they could have won a road game last year. 0-4 on the road.
Okay, but those are still close games. That was year 1.5 for Brown. I think this is the year they really turned that corner.
Iowa State versus Oklahoma.
Right. You might be right. We'll see. I'm just seeing that there are some tough road games on the schedule this year, and last year they couldn't get it done on the road.
I don't think it's as tough. I mean, at Oklahoma. After that, yes, at K-State. But once again, if they beat Iowa State would have 2 losses. So therefore, and they would have the tiebreaker over Iowa State. So they can afford to lose that game at K-State.
Yeah, that race for number 2 is going to be a dogfight. I expect whoever gets that number 2 spot to have at least 2 losses. Yes. Oklahoma will probably get through with at least 1 or 0 losses, but whoever's coming out with that second spot going to have 2 losses. I'm guessing. I do think it's going to be Iowa State because I think they're a better team and I think their schedule breaks.
But that means they got to win at West Virginia, or West Virginia's got to lose somewhere else, right?
Well, they beat them by fucking, like Nick said, 35 last year. So let's figure they beat them by 20 this year.
In Morgantown with fans.
In Morgantown, maybe they beat them by 7, but they get the W.
I'll give you the 20 points in Morgantown. I'll take West Virginia all day on that.
All I know is that if West Virginia makes a Big 12 championship, I don't have the stat in front of me. I have no idea if it's true, but I would imagine it's the only time a school has represented themselves in the conference championship where they went winless on the road the year before.
Yeah,
we'd have to get
sure
a statistician.
The ACC Coastal's got something to say about that.
Yeah, it's probably true.
What about Texas? Can we make a case for Texas?
Bijan Robinson.
I mean, they have a. I mean, I guess their schedule is actually tough because they get TCU the week before Oklahoma. That TCU has a great record against Texas. I want to say like Patterson's 8-3 and like I forget the number off the top of my head, but I know he has a great record against Texas. I mean, do we make the case then for the likes of Texas or TCU?
Well, Texas, new coach, new quarterback. End of discussion. I think. I mean, you got to see how it happens. I don't see how any way you can come out and say Texas is going to be in the Big 12 championship. You know, yeah, very good running game, great running back, but there's way too many unknowns for you to make such a bold statement like that. Not saying that you're making it, but just saying if a Texas Longhorn fan was, I think I like TCU. I mean, TCU could be there. They would be my dark horse candidate. I'm
with you there. I mean, I think TCU definitely could. They have, but even their away games are brutal, man. At Oklahoma, at K-State, at Oklahoma State, at Iowa State.
That's brutal.
I think West Virginia literally has the best schedule to set up for this. I mean, now Iowa State might be the best team.
That's where the rub is there.
Yeah. Even OK State at Texas, at Iowa State, back-to-back away games, and then at West Virginia and at Texas Tech later in the year.
They might have a chance. Let me say this about Texas: we give them shit. We give them cred because their losses were by 2 points against TCU, 4 overtime loss against Oklahoma.
But they should have lost to Texas Tech
and
too,
a 3-point loss against Iowa State. But yeah, they also had overtime wins against Texas Tech and against Oklahoma State. So they just played a bunch of close games. That's not a team you can have a ton of confidence that. I mean, when you're playing that many close games, you're not going to win them all. It's just a fact. So they're not going to come out of this division or this conference.
Your Big 12 championship is Oklahoma.
Let me tell
State,
you what's going to
State.
happen. Let me tell you what's a bold prediction. We just predicted. We did Oklahoma. We said they're going to have 1 loss in the regular season because we're thinking with our heads. But if I'm being bold here, Oklahoma is going to go 12-0. They're going to lose to a 10-2 Iowa State team in the Big 12 championship. Iowa State's going to win
that
their,
happening.
Their first.
Well, Nick, you know why is they would have to play Iowa State twice in 3 weeks.
Right.
But Oklahoma will still make the playoffs, just like Ohio State jumped Penn State despite the head-to-head loss.
Would they put Iowa State in?
No, Iowa State with 2 losses is going to be in the Cotton Bowl or the.
Hold on. So you're saying Oklahoma loses in the Big 12 championship and they still make the playoffs?
Yeah, just like.
I don't know if that's
so
many.
Well,
if they're 12-1, they've done it with Ohio State. They've done it.
Ohio
Alabama.
State and the Big 10, they're one of the Power 5 conferences. The Big 12 is not.
That's true. It would be an exception to the rule. I just think 12-0 regular season, close loss in the Big 12.
They might be number 1 when they play. I mean, if Bama and Clemson were to drop a game,
they'll drop to like number 3 or 4, and they'll play in the playoff.
Obviously, in a vacuum, you got to see the whole landscape. But I would be surprised if Oklahoma makes the playoff if they lose the Big 12 championship.
You might be right. Who's your Big 12 championship, Nick? Iowa State, Oklahoma.
Yeah, it is. Iowa State, Oklahoma.
West Virginia, Oklahoma. You heard it here first. All right.
Crazy.
You heard it here first. All right, folks.
Crazy bastard.
I want to tell you guys
You crazy, man.
I want to tell you guys that the college football experience is brought to you by Underdog. Make sure to head over to underdogfantasy.com and use the promo code SGPN for a free $25. That's right. Sign up now for a free shot at $1 million. So download the app and sign up at underdogfantasy.com, promo code SGPN. And while you're at it, you're downloading these things, download the SGPN app. Yes, the SGPN app is now live in the App Store and Google Play Store. The app gives you easy access to all of our picks and podcasts. Don't forget to toss up an app review and download the SGPN app today. All right. We got the final two conferences here. All right. NC Nick, what are you making? I mean, I think we can all say, I guess here's what's crazy is Penn State has won. So we picture Ohio State winning the Big Ten East every year, but that's not always the case. Penn State won it a couple of years ago and then beat Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship. So that's what's crazy is Oklahoma, I think, has won 6 straight Big 12 championships. Clemson's won 6 straight ACC championship. I think maybe more than that. So you would think, okay, hey, Ohio State has the Big Ten on lock. Not necessarily. I mean, yes, they have a strong threshold, I would say, on that, but Penn State has won it in the past couple of years. So in the East, Nick, do you see anyone really pushing the likes of Ohio State this year?
Probably Rutgers. No, no, I'm joking. I like Rutgers. Rutgers is going to go bowling this year. Yeah. So the obvious choices are, I guess, probably Indiana, Penn State. You can throw Michigan in there if you want, but no, it's the Buckeyes division. They're going to be in the Big Ten championship again.
No way Penn State upsets them on the road. Penn State does play them well, though. If you look, even in their losses, they've played them well.
It's possible, but especially with the road game, I don't see it happening.
Yeah, and yeah, I don't know. I mean, Pat, do you have Ohio State just rolling here?
Yeah, you got to figure. I mean, if you're being realistic, the inner Ohio State hater in me wants to doubt it, but no. I mean, in reality, they're stronger than ever.
What's the second best storyline in the Big Ten East? Is it Michigan with Harbaugh being fired? If that happens, or is it Indiana being a believer, or is it your guys Rutgers Scarlet Knights that you planted the flag on?
I got 2. I got Schiano making strides, and I got Harbaugh's hot seat. Those are my.
It's got to be Harbaugh's hot seat. I mean, they're Michigan, but actually Michigan is basically Miami now.
Everyone's Miami. Every conference has a Miami.
Yeah, that's true.
Who's the SEC's version of Miami? Is LSU?
Georgia?
No, it's too close. Yeah, it is Georgia, right?
Yeah.
But they're a lot better.
yeah, that's true. So Schiano, what do you think? Bowl game?
That would be a big step. What did they do last year?
They were Rutgers. They
3-6.
Yeah, but they took Michigan to 3 overtimes. I mean, considering he didn't have spring ball, I thought he should have got coach of the year in the Big Ten. I'm like, man, considering how bad they were the year before and him not having time to really implement a lot of his stuff, I thought that was great. I thought it was a great first season for Greg Schiano.
2-10 goes to 3-6 in a COVID shortened season. Not bad.
Unbelievable. They just looked the test.
Not to mention a triple overtime loss against Michigan.
That's what I'm saying. They looked the part as like a decent team.
Loss against Nebraska.
They even played Ohio State fairly well considering their recent history.
Yeah, 49-27, like a 3 touchdown game. It's not that bad on the road.
And remember, that's 3-7 with just conference games. You know, if you throw in
no fluff,
Delaware and Temple and Syracuse,
watch
win all
behold,
those.
You're bowling in year 1.
Watch out for those blue hens, buddy. Watch out for those blue hens.
I mean, Temple, Syracuse, and Delaware in the non-conference play. What's the record coming out of that?
Probably 3-0, but I could say. I mean, Temple could also beat them, but I'm saying like
maybe 2-1,
3-0. I could totally see 3-0.
2-1, 3-0. Fucking Rutgers is bowling, baby.
Instead of Texas being back, Rutgers is back, baby. All right. Well, we all have Ohio State. We all think Jim Harbaugh.
The other interesting storyline is 2 coaches that we do not like at Maryland and at Michigan State. And if we're right in our predictions that it was bad hires and they're bad coaches, well, what does that mean at the end of this year?
I'm not even saying Tucker's a bad coach. I think the jury's still out, but I will say Loxley is a bad coach. But Tucker's just I don't understand.
Well, you're
why.
a Colorado guy. So
I know, but I'm saying like
you have a vendetta.
But we still went 5-7 with him. I was way more impressed with 1 year of Carl Durrell. When he didn't have spring ball, he didn't even get a chance to put his coaches in. He was the last hire. I was more impressed with that performance.
Well, you have to be
than anything Mel Tucker's ever done as a head coach. Looking at last year's Michigan State,
he's only got 2 years on.
I know, but well, I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah.
My point is, I guess that's why I'm like the jury's out. Like I was not impressed in the small sample size we have.
Agreed.
Now, Mike Loxley, I'm convinced he's a really bad coach.
Well, there's a lot to that.
Yeah,
his record would indicate as much.
Yes.
But then again, recruiting is part of being a coach, and when you're in the right situation, he is making some strides.
So you think Maryland's bowling this year? No, you don't.
I don't think so, but
we already did
can
that
see
episode.
5 wins out of the old Terrapins.
Okay. Fucking
baby steps, buddy. Rome wasn't built in a day.
5 wins.
Wait for that Under Armour NIL money to come in and see if you think Mike Loxley, when he's winning national championships.
Yeah.
What year is this? 3 or 4?
I think 3.
This is year 3 coming up, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. But still, 5 wins is
the road is long.
I would like that would be. He would still have a losing year, so I don't know. I don't think 5 wins is still a good year for them.
No.
They're Maryland. They're playing in the Big Ten East. What do you want? A fucking
they should
want
be
them to beat Ohio State year 1. You
they
want
could
to
beat Rutgers. They could beat Michigan State, and Michigan was 2-4 last year.
Okay,
Indiana's not unbeatable.
Yeah.
God, high expectations. Give my guy Loxley a chance. I'm planting my flag on Loxley.
Dude, you know what high expectations is? 10 years ago, Indiana was the bottom of the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they had a fluke good season that was only mediocre in reality.
What are we
amidst a fucking pandemic.
Do you think Indiana could be a player this year or no?
No, I don't.
No.
Yeah.
Bowl game. I mean, they'll go to a bowl. They've built up the program far enough where they're a solid program.
They're still playing
they're not gonna contend
brutal
for the
division.
All right. Well, let's talk about the best division, the most interesting division in the Big Ten. Not the best. The Big Ten West. This is one where, I mean, I think you can make it. It's like the Pac-12 South. You can make a case for every team minus Illinois.
Don't go to sleep on them just yet.
Whoa. You're still gonna make that case on Purdue after they haven't won more than 7 games in 25 years?
Yeah. I think Purdue is a player still. I think they would not surprise me at all if the Boilermakers are I think there's going to be total carnage in this division.
Colby skipped history class.
I wish we could rewind to whatever week it was when I brought up that Purdue stat. Yeah, I forget what even the stat was, but they hadn't won more than 7 games, I think, in like 20 years.
Well,
it's brutal.
You don't need to win more than 7 games to win the Big Ten West.